Grievous, and welcome to the Orc Fort Podcast, a podcast dedicated to all things UO through the eyes of Orc role players. I'm your host, Xu'rek, and today I have the very special guest, Mr. Sir Tibal of the Sir Knights Guild, the guild leader at the Sir Knights Guild. Tibal and I discuss all things kind of UO, his history with the game, and the history of his guild. It's a great episode, so I encourage you to grab your bottle of grog, sharpen that blood axe, and march into the Orc Fort. Take a seat next to the big old campfire and enjoy today's episode. All right, Tibal the Shield, welcome to the Orc 4 podcast, man. How's it going?
Oh, man, thanks for having me on. It's a true honor.
Yeah, I'm glad you can make it. I mean, we're both have young, we're like gamers, but not really, you know. We're kind of like pseudo gamers at this stage. What is, you know?
The most time I game now is the 2 bots that I run for Sir.
It's just I think now too, when you get into like leadership in some of these guilds, playing the game is like probably 20% of my UO gaming experience now, you know. It's kind of fun, like recording shit like this or writing up stories tends to be the majority.
Absolutely. It's a game of Discord combat.
Yeah, and it's funny because I've had a few, you're episode 7 by the way, and I had a few players that, you know, the one thing they always talk about is shit, man, life before Discord, and now it's like we live on it. It's just crazy to think we did it without.
Yeah, it takes me back. I mean, and we, you know, I don't know. We'll get into history and stuff, I guess. But
well, yeah, let's start there.
Even going back.
Yeah, let's start there. I like to ask my guests this: when is the first time you believe you heard the words Ultima Online or UO? And talk to us about that experience for you. How old were you? Where were you? All that.
Yeah, so I have some great memories from starting off. So I was actually in I don't remember what grade. I was about 13. And one of my friends at school was like, "Hey, dude, there's this game I've got. It's awesome. You should get it," or whatever. And so we go up to the EB Games to buy it. They only had the like charter edition at the electronic boutique that I went to. Throwback to anyone that remembers those. Which was like I guess you'd call it the collector's edition now, right? So it was like the big box, came with the, you know, obviously the cloth map and like the picture of the Hildebrandt, you know, the classic UO.
And the pin. It came with the pin.
It came with the pewter pin, of the UO symbol. I have a few of those things. I know I have the map. It's actually up on my wall. But I don't. Most of that stuff I don't think I have anymore. But
so
that
map was awesome though, man. I went and bought one for myself. I have a brother who played with me a lot, and I bought one for him on his birthday, and he was like, "Holy shit!" You know, I mean, they're not that easy. They're not that hard. I mean, they're pretty hard to find. They're not that easy to locate. And they're running a couple $100 on the good ones.
I have my original that I framed and hung on the wall, and then on the other side of the window is it's not cloth, it's like I don't know, like a heavy paper Outlands map, actually, from when they released the first expansion. I don't know if Owen still does it, but you could make a donation, and a pretty sizable one, but it would come with a map. So
wow, okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I really like maps is kind of a thing. So,
so you're 13. You go to this weird place called a store. You know,
1998. Yeah, I paid with cash. Right. I was using dial-up internet. You can take all the nostalgia you want. What's really funny is I started the game. I had trouble getting it to work. Right. And so computers back then, it was a wild west of just internet. Like it was nothing was seamless, nothing was easy.
No, I think like 75% of computers had viruses in them in this time period, you know, so running shit was hard.
And so I was having all this trouble, and I remember having all this trouble getting it connected. I finally got it connected, and it starts downloading the patches, right? And it's taking forever. It's like 2 days worth of patches, and my family is about to go on a vacation for like a week and a half over summer or spring break or whatever. And so I'm like, I don't know. I just left it connected. I probably didn't tell my parents. They probably were furious with the phone line tied up. So it would download this patch while we were gone, and then we fly back, and we actually vacationed in Hawaii that year. My dad used to work for the airlines, so he would get free passes. We flew all over the place for free.
Nice.
But to do that, you had to take the most undesirable flights in the world.
Oh,
so we're coming
like
back
5 a.m. bullshit, right? Like all
we're coming back from Hawaii, connecting out of LAX on the red-eye flight. And I sit down, I get home, it's like 3 a.m. and my computer's up, and it's like logging, like I log in, and it's like create a character, and it asks me for a character name, and I was like, So I went with Red Eye, and that has been my online handle ever since.
Oh, that's crazy. Oh, and you heard that intro song, right? The UO intros.
Yeah, with the chest opening. Yeah, I don't use Red Eye in Outlands because it doesn't really fit my character, but it's been my mainstay ever since. And it's so many memories of playing the game back in '98. Like players had tents; you could buy a tent as a house.
I did not know.
Yeah,
that. Holy shit!
And there was no house security. All you had was a key. There was no lockdowns. There was no secure containers. There was no bans. So if you lost your key or had your key stolen, you lost your house. It was gone. Like someone else could go make a copy of that key and just steal your stuff.
And it's their house now, basically?
Basically. And the tents had you couldn't put anything in them because they had no door. Like you could just walk into it. But it had a single chest. The chest came with a key. But the best part was it felt like it was secure, but the chest could be lockpicked. It was
God! So it was
a wild time, man. What a time to be alive.
We need tents in Outlands. We need you need just I don't know. It looks so good.
Every time it comes up, I'd rather have tents than caravan wagons. 100%.
Please, yeah, and tents could be like I don't know, 2x2 little tents, or
they could be little. Yeah, they could be the same size as caravan, smaller than a caravan. You don't need a lot of space, and then they're open. You can kind of check them out, like whatever.
Yeah.
Colorful. You could get different colored tents. All kinds of good stuff.
Yeah,
but
think about it. Owen.
The other, yeah. I send him a picture of it every time it gets mentioned. He's probably just ignores it. But the other thing that was hilarious, I talked about the Wild West of PC gaming back then, was the recommended, I remember very specifically, the recommended specs for Ultima Online was a 150 megahertz Pentium processor.
Oh man!
I had a 75 megahertz Pentium processor.
Oh, you were those guys. You were one of those guys that were
literally ran at half speed. So like my run was slower than most people's walk. And it wasn't like I would like take a step and pause, take a step and pause. The game would actually run my guy at like half animation speed. It was so stupid.
Yeah, I remember I always would see those players and I thought it was I thought the game was bugging, and then I didn't know anything about internet connectivity or anything, but
it wasn't even lag. If my computer just couldn't handle it.
Yeah, I remember as orcs we'd see like people on mounts, and we're like, how are we catching this guy? Like we were on foot running, and we're catching this dude.
So that started, there was no Feluca and Trammel at the time. Everything was just open PvP outside of towns.
Yeah.
And that started my PvP career because I couldn't run away. I was slower than anyone else in the game. So anytime I got attacked, I would just fight back.
So
I would always lose, but I would just fight back because what are you going to do? Run away? Like you're just going to die tired.
So you're 13. You hop on, dude. We were all shitheads back then. So I know you weren't a chivalrous knight back in those days. You couldn't have been.
No, I was okay. I played with a guild called. It was actually like 3 guilds. There was no alliance system or anything, but it was 3 guilds that kind of grouped up. I was in the Guardians of Valor on Great Lakes, so definitely had some run-ins with the orcs on that server in the early days. But we weren't really a very heavy RP guild at the time. I did eventually move on when most of those guys kind of moved on from the game. There was a player town called Tar Valon for a while that was on these like 3 islands out in the Bay of Britain that had these like marble buildings in them, and one of them was an entrance to one of the expansions. So I was a member of that. That was kind of my first taste of RP. Actually, no, I take it back. Me and a friend made a Viking guild very early on. It was just the two of us. And it was, the whole thing was we RP'd as Vikings that were searching for Odin's lost hammer or something, right? Or Thor's lost hammer. And we would sail up. There was no ocean combat. You would just sail up, get off your boat, and that was it.
Right.
Boats couldn't be sunk. Like they just existed. And we would sail up in our Viking ship, our longship, and jump off and just murder people. It was so stupid.
Great RP, man. Great RP.
Yeah, dude. But we would like yell, like, "Oh, for Thor," or whatever.
Where's the hammer? Just like
we,
attacking.
We only wore certain armor, like ring mail and spears, and it was hilarious. We were such dorks, man. But yeah, that was the beginning of my RP career a million years ago.
Jeez, man. And were you one of the guys that quit during OSI, or did you play all the servers or shards before Outlands?
Yeah, no. So I played from '98 till about 2001, maybe 2002, somewhere in there. I think 2 expansions had come out. It was just before the third one when I quit. And really that last year, I was just doing Order versus Chaos Wars. I don't know if you remember those, but a guild could pledge fealty to Order or Chaos, and then it was just open warfare.
It was basically like factions, right? I remember that.
Yeah, and you could capture things, right? And I ran around with. That's when I really ran around with a bunch of turds. Black Company. We were not nice folks, but whatever. It was fun.
So did you quit? Did you see Age of Shadows?
No, I think that's the one I quit just before.
Okay, yeah, I think I started just before Age of Shadows, like heavily playing just before Age of Shadows.
Yeah,
that was like my time.
Yeah, I played during Renaissance and the Third Age, and then I think Age of Shadows. I think was the next one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was Age of Shadows, then the Samurai, the dreaded.
Yeah. Came out. Once that came out, I was like, I'm done. I'm out. I'm beyond gone. I'm never coming back. I actually never played another free shard, maybe log in and kind of run around, nothing too serious, until just before I joined Outlands. I don't want to advertise for him, but I played UO Forever for a few months, and there was no RP community there at all. It was dead, done. Sir had already left. All the orcs had already left. Everyone had already migrated to Outlands, right?
Yeah. It happens,
and
right?
So
it's just phases, man. It's just one dying planet, and then we just kind of
you just move to the next. And so I'm just hanging out. I'm actually just hanging out in Forever and really just playing by myself, which is not very fun. So eventually I started looking. I'm like, I want to do RP. What do I want to do? I was like, I want to be a knight. So I went and just started looking, and I found a webpage, knightsguild.net. I was like, oh, Outlands. Let me check that out. Checked out Outlands. Apparently I'd already created an account. I think I created an account Outlands right when it came out. And then again, played for a few days and then never went back. Classic nostalgia hit, and then just walk away.
I always say that you are sort of weird like that, right? Because the way you kind of would come back to it is the way I think a lot of us and a lot of people listening would probably go back to it. I always equate it to we kind of you will mess us up because it's we dated a really awesome girl as our first girlfriend, and then it's we just compared everyone after that, and then we always go back. but we still have access to her, right? We still got her phone number. We can still call her. We can still kind of revisit our dates and talk about those dates versus the ones we do now. And it's I just never. It's hard to compare it, man. It kind of ruined gaming for me, honestly.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is just kind of thinking of the RP community in Outlands in general has always felt, or not in Outlands, I'm sorry, in UO in general, has always felt so much, I don't know what, stronger, more vibrant than, say, other MMOs even, or other games. Yeah, because I was... Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say on that point, yeah, I mean, my only sample that I have outside of UO is WoW, where I think I looked for. See, I was still craving that orc roleplay, right? Because I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
on UO, and then I found some, and it's these guys. But I always say this is kind of interesting because in WoW, did you ever play WoW by any chance?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so you know how when you hear someone from the other alliance or another race, they transmute the language they translate the language for you right into Orcish or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had this discussion before where somebody would be like, "Hey, wouldn't it be cool if they did that for you guys in Outlands?" And I'm like, "No, it wouldn't be cool, right? Because it's a lazy way
Exactly.
to play the game for us, right? It's like if it just makes me and also they're like, "Oh, and someone's mentioned to me in conversation, they're like, wouldn't it be cool if Owen you can make our orc race?" And I'm like, no, that wouldn't be cool either because
Yeah.
we don't need it. We got the mass, bro. That's all we need. And even if we didn't have the mass, we'd RP as orcs. You know what I mean? So it doesn't even. We don't need any of those things, and I think those things contribute to a weaker overall culture. A true sandbox like
I
Outlands, nah, man, it flourishes.
yeah. Yeah, and I really kind of came to the same conclusion. I think it's the limitations of the game itself, right? The 2D sprites, the top-down view, you can't see the whole world, right? You just kind of see your guy. It kind of narrows your scope, and the game is limited, right? Especially before they introduced weird races, but everyone's the same. Now you put an orc mask on and suddenly you can act like an orc. And same with knights, I try to, when I'm in heavy role play, try to talk the long way around, I call it sometimes. And
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
by the grace of the virtues on this morning, how art thou? Like really long-winded kind of like soliloquies
Yeah, but
of
man,
speech instead of just, hey, what's up?
yeah, but those details are what really put you guys over the top. I don't know if you heard it on one of my podcasts. He was talking about his first encounter with you guys on Outlands, and I think like 2 or 3 nights visited him when he was setting up our area where the Bloodrock Fort is now, and they were like, halt, who art thou in the shadows or whatever or something like that. And it's one sentence, and he knew, all right, these guys get it. These guys
These
are
are
down to do
down.
this, right? These dudes are down to do it.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and it really puts it on you as the player. And I think the thinking about where else do you see great role playing like that? It's in like tabletop, right? Where again the world is so limited, and you have to use your imagination to build the world around you. And I think Ultima Online really supports that kind of similar, like, it can only do so much, I'll fill in the rest. Whereas games like WoW, I'm an orc and I have orc friends and I do orc things and I make orc sound, and it's like, it does it for you, and it takes the imagination out of it.
Yeah, 100%, and that's really, we kind of always talk about this, but that's kind of the point of the game is we are seeking that adventure. Of course, Outlands gives us a true end game, right? PVM wise, there's, excuse me, limitless sort of potential there. PvP, there's all of it, but at the end of the day, it's if you want to do something, you can do it. That's why I always kind of, when I read the suggestions, or sometimes in our roleplay channel within our community, people are like, why doesn't someone do this? And I'm like, dude, you do it. You can do whatever you want,
Yeah,
man. You just do it. Like, I
yeah.
mean, it won't be easy probably, but you can do whatever you want, dude.
Exactly. And the other thing I think Outlands has done a really great job of, that I haven't really ever seen before, not in my experience anyway, is the staff that run the server are very supportive of our little niche roleplay community, right? Like, the Orc Fort is a great example. The Hailstone battlements we're sitting in now, right?
Right,
Another
right.
great example. Those didn't exist a year ago. And I remember I had asked in 2022, like, hey, can we get some like open world RP elements around Hailstone, our player fortress town that we've built as the Knights Guild? And he was like, yeah, I'll work on it. And here we are, like 2024, like midway through. But whatever, they have priorities. But in general, like with Eric and Atropa being very supportive, some of the coolest memories, like the bomb that one of the events at South Reach Inn, where I don't even remember who planted the bomb, but it was like this big bomb went off and everyone got blown back. That's so cool.
Dude,
And
I think
it's so fun to get.
I wasn't there for it, but yes, it's an epic
I
video
have
that
a,
we talk about it all the
I have
time.
I have a GIF of it, and it's perfect because I'm standing there, and everyone's like, "Stop!" Like just going at this guy as he's running to the wall with the bomb. You can think Lord of the Rings style.
Yeah, yep.
And it blows up and everyone blows off screen, but I'm standing like 2 tiles in front of a tree, so I don't really move that far. And so I just see everyone just flying. It was wild.
You know what's crazy? You may or may not know this, but so for the listener, we have a orc, and he's due to jump on the show later, but Yogg, who basically is just the fattest, nastiest orc you can imagine. His roleplay is next level, dude. Like, when you see him, you know that he's just this massive, and it's great because he chalks it up to where he'll walk around like, and he'll take 3 steps and then stop and then like wheeze, just emotes that he's wheezing, or it takes 2 steps and like wheezes, goes up against a house and emotes that he leans up against it, resting his oversized body. I mean, he's giving you this picture, you know what I mean? It's awesome.
Yeah.
Anyways, in the explosion, he doesn't move at all, and I think it's because he's in front of, just like you, but he doesn't move at all, and so like we're like, he's so fat, he just fucking stood there.
He just blocked the blast. One of my favorite I have 2 really fond memories of fighting Urk, the Bloodrock Clan. One was early on. I had made a blacksmith, Dushar Alehammer, one of my favorite characters. Unfortunately, Tibal kind of became my default because of like guild leadership and all that, and so I find it hard to step away from him to do other things. But he was such a fun character. I took him to 120 blacksmith, only using ore that I mined, and I only mined it in the Hailstone Mountains, in the Hailstone Mines, which was just a huge accomplishment for me. Like, it just takes so long to get 120 blacksmithing, and then I built his entire persona around it, right? So his name's Alehammer, and he uses the large warhammer, wears heavy plate, and he'd wear a blacksmith apron over it and stuff. And I remember we were doing duels in the little dueling pit with the orc fort, and it's like one I don't know, snotling or something comes down, and I just fight him. Snotling dies, and he just says, "I am Sir Dushar Alehammer, Forge Knight," or whatever. And then the next challenger comes in, and he just did that a few times. One of our guys actually wrote a story on it that was really awesome. But that was so fun and just so spontaneous, right? It was just random encounter, if you will, and just this memorable battle. But the other one was Bargthok had actually it was on my birthday, and he like did this like surprise during one of his events, but during it I ended up in a duel 1-on-1 with Yogg.
Dude, I was there for that. It was at the cathedral by Hayden.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you our side of the story once I hear yours, all right? Because I was on the comms and I heard this shit go down live.
And it was so funny because, I mean, if you play Outlands and you've ever fought 1-on-1, Dexter versus Dexter, those fights can go forever.
But not just
because nobody has any.
Not just Dexter versus Dexter. These guys are on foot, right? So that's a big thing.
Yeah.
Y'all are both got alchemy and just a tank Dexter's shields. These guys were doing like 10 damage when they can, to each other a pop. And it was just hilarious to see.
Tipple's build was 120 camping and then 100 like swords, anatomy, healing, parry, resist. Like, he was just built to not die. And we were just sitting there wailing on each other. And it was probably, I don't know, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It felt like eternity.
Yeah, it was probably like 15 to 20 minutes. And what's funny is that for the listener, we do like these RP PvP events where this was an organized some are spontaneous and some are organized, and the more complicated ones have to be organized because there's a story behind it. For this one, we were corrupting the cathedral, and I don't know if you remember, they had hexagrams that I think Atropa helped us with, and black shit was forming around the church. It was awesome, dude. And then we burned the nearby farm. You remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was actually at that farm that Bartok had, and again, it was this goofy NPC monster, like chaos looking knight that spawned. And he was like yelling like happy birthday or something as he's like trying to kill us all. It was so funny. It was so funny. It caught me by surprise.
It was an orc. Oh man, the name is escaping me. A Ravager or something, right? Wasn't it? It
something
was
like
yeah,
that.
It was an orc NPC that we unleashed on you guys or some shit.
Yeah, so funny. But yeah, then the duel with Yogg, and it was like kind of off to the side, kind of in the woods along the road, not in like the main battle. And we're just, man, it was cinematic, right? Like you could picture it. In fact, I still have this like mental image that I've built of that fight of Tibal with his round bronze shield that looks beat to hell, and Yogg with like, I don't know, a massive club or
he had like
a weapon he used.
I think he had a club and he had his wooden shield. But what's funny about that is that it became pretty evident because you were pretty much for us we call them brutes, right? It's like a class of orc that you have to wear a shield. You get a couple of plate mail pieces, which is not generally accepted by us, but for brutes, we give it to them. But you're kind of his counterpart a little bit in the sense that you were also a tank. And when this stuff went down, man, and y'all started fighting in the voice, people were like, "Don't attack Tibble!" Like it instantly became like we were just kind of watching this shit go down. You know, I don't even know who won. I think y'all got ganked at the end or some shit like.
I think so. I think we got run up on, or Yogg got attacked by someone not in like some Pathfinders or something. You know, I don't even remember.
We need to finish this out, man. Each of you get 1,000 heal pots, 1,000 cure pots, and just save 8 hours of your time and just go at it and see.
It was like the corny movies, and it's like a dance off, and they're like everyone's circled around the two people, seeing who can dance the hardest.
Dude, yeah, and it was crazy. We didn't plan that. Obviously, it just kind of happened that way, you know. But no, that was a good one. That was an epic. That was. I'm glad to hear that you enjoyed that because we thoroughly enjoyed it as well.
Yeah, and that's just it's like the best part about the Outlands role-playing community is it is one community. Like we are obviously our guilds are at war, but that is just thematic, right? Like I would consider orc or brigands or any of those bad guy guilds like allies in the end, right? Like
Correct.
if you needed help in an Omni, I think we've even done this before. Our boss, we're like, let's go help them. Let's go. You know, they're getting raided. Like, it turns into chaos because we're orange and everyone's orange.
Yeah,
but
it's probably not going to work out, but y'all are going to come. You know what I mean?
We would do it, man. I would take the hits, but it's really a great community, and things can happen spontaneously, or not. Like I remember, this wasn't with Orc, but it was with Brigand. If you remember Bayara, we were the knights. We were just chasing around Honor Shrine, chasing some random reds overland, right? So we're on horses trying to chase these murderers down. And I'm on Sir Dushar, and I kind of split off trying to like cut them off, but then they went the other way. So I'm kind of alone, and I come around this corner, and randomly, uninvolved in the original combat, Bayara runs up, and I just yell "you" in all caps, and Bayara responds "not me," and turned around and ran the other way. It was so funny. It was one of my favorite just spontaneous interactions. You, not me. And just hightails it out of there. Oh, good stuff, man.
Let me ask you a question here, because I'm curious how this came to be. I'll start with the first one here. So you found, let's backtrack a bit. You found the website. You want to be a knight. You're on Outlands.
Yeah.
What year is it? Or it's 2019, 2018, or because it launched in 2018, right? Was it?
It was maybe 2020. I want to say it was kind of during COVID and all that.
Okay. Okay.
I remember playing heavily during COVID, so. Right around, I think it was just before all of that nonsense started blowing up. So what would that have been? Spring of 2020.
So yeah, spring of 2020. So that's probably when okay.
Yeah.
So you find the guild. You say, I'm going to become a knight. You make a squire. Yeah. Who's leading it at the time? Who's the guild leader? What's your life like?
So we had a stand-in guild leader at the moment. So Rendlesham, or Glavos, as some people know him, was kind of on a leave of absence, and so Sir Valamir was kind of running the show. He's the one who actually recruited me. He gave me a quest, which was, I was like instantly like, yeah, before I could join. It was just to get my own set of plate armor, which, you know, like whatever. It's like 1,000 gold, you know, from the vendor, like who cares? But as a new player, new player dungeon, it only drops like 8 gold at a time. So yeah, it took a while. So I get my gold, I get my plate armor, and I join the guild. And then Squires at the time there wasn't really like you have to do certain things. I know Orc does probably it best with like the scar system and things like that.
Yeah.
But for us, it was just like get integrated, get up to speed, get an aspect, you know, kind of all that stuff. And then I was eventually knighted, not too long after. And it's kind of funny, my knighting ceremony, which the dubbing ceremonies are one of my favorite things that Sir does. Every knight has gone through a dubbing ceremony. Like, we'll promote people, and if the schedules don't line up, they don't get promoted until they go through that ceremony. Like, it is a serious thing. You don't get to be a full knight until you get swear the oath on the bridge.
Yeah, and I'll show the listeners here, because this will be on YouTube, so they'll be watching the knighting ceremony pictures here. But yeah, nice, I think it's awesome that you guys do that, man. It's really cool.
And everyone does it on the bridge. Each officer kind of does it a little different. I actually have them recite an oath that we came up with many years ago, which I think is kind of extra special. If you're going to be a knight, you got to live the life, right? But yeah, and so I got knighted with Sir Black, who many people will know as quite the ferocious PvPer. Great guy. Love that dude. He's, again, on a bit of a break right now. But yeah, me and Sir Black standing on the bridge, shoulder to shoulder, getting knighted by Sir Valamir in his gold plate armor.
There's got to be a picture of that somewhere, you getting knighted.
I can share a picture. I have a video of it, actually.
Yeah, we'll loop the video here. We'll loop it. But
yeah.
So you're a full-fledged member now. You're in the guild. How big are you guys? Where are you located? Kind of.
We were tiny. So we had Hailstone, and we actually shared Hailstone with another guild, a German guild called the Defenders of Steel. I shouldn't say they're German. They speak German. They're Austrian. They would be very upset if I called them German. No, the Defenders of Steel, and we had 2 limestone keeps kind of side by side. And most of the houses on that little peninsula there, just east of Prevalia. Unfortunately, we have a neighbor that we have as yet been unable to convince to sell their property, but a lovely yellow beacon of misery. But
I think I know those guys. Yeah, we've run into them a couple times.
Yeah, whatever. I've told people, like, Hailstone is set. We have our space. We have our custom castle now. Like, we don't. We're actually getting somewhat close to unlocking the island, and I've told Owen I don't want to be sequestered from the world as an RP guild. That feels real dumb. But maybe we can work something out with him with like a drawbridge or something to it. That would be cool.
Yeah, we talked about it too. It's like if we ever get one, the Slantlings won't be able to get out of it because they
yeah. They'll just have to swim.
They'll have to hang out on the fucking guild island until they reach Grunt or something.
Yeah, so we're in Hailstone. I got knighted, and man, I wanted more. Like, the guild was tiny. We could barely kill a mini boss on our own. In fact, we probably couldn't kill a mini boss on our own. You can maybe get 5 or 6 knights at a time, most of which were new and low aspect, and of course codexes were not as fully developed now as they were then. And so I started a series of tournaments to try to just encourage role-playing within the guild. We called it the Tournament of Virtue. The first one was just internal, and then from there we kind of expanded it to the Alliance, and we had like 5 or 6 of them. The last one I held was the Tournament of Justice, and it was funny. We started these tournaments. I'm like, it has to have jousting. Like, it has to, right? Yeah, it's got to have dueling. It's got to have archery. It's got to have jousting. Like, I'm a knight. And so we came up with this system that actually worked pretty well. but it required you to have no fencing. Like if you have 0 fencing skill and your opponent has 0 fencing skill, you have a 50-50 chance of hitting each other, which is real stupid, but that's how the map. So it required both participants to have 0 fencing skill, and then they would just attack each other on horseback and run past each other with a spear. I'm like, that's close enough.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to get it perfect. That's good enough.
And
sorry, there's like
a
police siren and ambulance by me. So
it's all good. Okay. We'll just talk over it. But no healing, and you just would do passes until someone died. And that's how you would win the joust tournament.
Coin toss every contact, and then you just keep going until someone dies.
Yeah, basically. And so we did that for a while. And at the time, the Outlands staff, Luthien, had a forum post with like development priorities, and one of them was jousting equipment. And I'm like, dude, we got to get on this, man. He's like, yeah, I haven't even looked at it. I'm like, well, can you? Like, I sent him like videos of the jousting and stuff, and then one weekend he's like, hey, hop on test. I was like, what? And he's like, I coded jousting last night. He just like cranked it out in like one evening or something.
So the Outlands community has the Sir Knights to thank for jousting early on.
And that's just kind of, again, when I talk about like Outlands developers and staff being supportive of the community, I mean, that's just an example, right? Everyone benefits. Of course, they're not going to give us too favorable treatment. That wouldn't be fair, but
right.
It's like, oh, jousting, yeah, we can do that. And so now we have this full-fledged, it's kind of random, but this jousting system. Owen went and made some more jousting arenas around the world, so that we could host these different tournaments. And then we had the Tournament of Justice, and everyone on the server was invited because it was the first big tournament with the new lance and shields. It was chaos. I think I had like an Averite sword stolen and like all kinds of just nonsense. But it was very stressful, but it was super successful. There was a huge turnout.
That's awesome.
It was really cool to see.
And so that kind of put y'all's name out there a little bit, kind of, and grew.
I think so. And one thing I think that's really helped Sir in terms of our name, and this happened early on when I started to kind of promote up through the ranks, which happened kind of just after I started these tournaments, was I felt like we had kind of an identity crisis. We didn't have a lot of like rules on like decorum and how we were supposed to act and be, but we weren't big enough to be like a big PVM guild or a big PvP guild, or we were just kind of nothing, you know what I mean? And so we kind of took some influence from Xu'rek, from the Bloodrock Clan, and we created these tokens of virtue that squires had to earn. He started as a page, could only wear leather armor and like basic sword and shield type weapons, which in this game, it's a tough way to play. Like, you are so undergunned, but that's what they did. And then they become a squire, and they could wear, chainmail, and then they become a knight and could wear plate, which was really cool. The issue we had with it was the amount of administration it took. It was a ton, and I didn't have very many officers at the time. It kind of all fell to me, and I just couldn't keep up. So we scaled it back a bit, but I think in that moment, in those kind of evolutions, we really, I think, and I'm very biased, but I think we found an identity, right?
Yeah, no, certainly. You guys, we can spot y'all a mile away in terms of, when someone behaves a certain way, it definitely became a little subculture, that you guys created.
Yeah, and even our enemies will compliment us sometimes, right? Like our boaters get compliments from in what can be kind of a fairly toxic boating community.
Fairly toxic,
like, man, those Sir guys. Yeah. I mean, they'll compliment us, which is great. And just in general, we try to act the way we're supposed to, right? We're virtuous knights. I kind of consider us a little bit chaotic good in some ways. My vision of a Sir Knight is not like a Knight Templar, like not like a singular order of very organized and disciplined knights, but more Arthurian knights, where each of the knights had their own like style of doing things and did their own quests, and and so each one is their own force du jour, right? And so I think you had Adontis on earlier.
I did,
on an earlier episode. He's a great example of, he is a very pious knight, right? Very zealous, hates orcs and hates people that do bad, and like almost to an extreme. And that was always kind of the ideal. It's like, I don't want to just be good. That's kind of boring, right?
Yeah. And
I want everyone.
Go ahead. But I was just gonna say on your point with the Dantis, and I think he does it masterfully, man. So I want to give him his
he's
credit.
So good at it.
If you're listening to this guy and you want to listen to more about the Knights roleplay, he does it so good because he's weaving in and out. Because his hatred is so much for us that, like, orcs wouldn't perceive this because we're not capable of such intellect. But if you were a human witnessing it, you might be like, man, this guy's actually, he's actually might be a little evil, right? Or he might be,
yes,
and he's it's a great way that he does it. So I wanted to say that.
And that was always in my vision. And, some people support this more than others, and that's fine. Everyone has their own kind of idea of what is right. But to me, it's like, we're good. We're zealous about the virtues. And by being that, you can have this kind of darker underside. You know what I mean? Like, maybe you go a little too far with spirituality or valor or humility, I guess, but
needing to cleanse the evil, and it's like, fucking, maybe you take some broad stroke approaches to doing so, so all orcs are bad, and all bring-ins need to be killed on, you know what I mean, etc.
That's right. And so even Sir Tibal, kind of his arc was, he rose up through the ranks, became Knight Commander. Bargtalk had this huge campaign that he ran for like a year, where we had some really major battles, and it was all kind of part of a grander campaign around Horseshoe Bay that culminated in a final battle that Sir actually lost, like, pretty handily. We got beat, and Sir Tibal took that very, very much to heart, right? Like, this was a breaking moment, kind of a very serious thing to him, that they had waged this war, this campaign, and came out on the wrong end of it, and what that means for the Knights Guild. And so he created an accord called the Hailstone Accord that basically lays out the powers of the Knight Commander and his ability to create standing armies, all this just fluff. But at the end of the day, saying, we don't answer to anybody. We only answer to ourselves, basically a declaration of independence, if you will. And that was kind of his bend towards something not so great, was like trying to consolidate power, not necessarily for himself, but for the guild. And just like kind of going over the top with it. So
he took the L a little too hard, man.
He took it hard, and it really shaped him, character wise, kind of going forward. And then, Sir Owain had his arc where he was kind of going crazy. I don't know if you remember those, where he'd be like killing random people and spawning huge waves of zombies and stuff. And Sir Tibal actually took that the hardest. Owain and him go way back, right? Like, tight at the hip, and suddenly his best bud was going crazy, and he actually stepped back as Knight Commander, and it actually came at a time that I needed a bit of a break. So Glava stepped back in. I took a step back and just focused on questing to try to save Sir Owain, and eventually took Knight Commander back over. But it's there's a little bit of darkness to the Knights, and I think that gives texture, right? Like, you don't want just to be goody good forever for the sake of being good,
right?
You probably need to get something out of it, right? And same with one of the things I always loved about Bloodrock Clan is you even had it on a webpage, I think, or something, was like your goal of being a monster, but with some kind of intelligence, right? Like
Yeah.
you can be a bad guy, but you're not just a mindless, you know, you have motivations and desires,
yeah,
even if they're simple, but
yeah, it's an iconic line. And it's the first line that I read when I joined was, and I forget, I think Nero mentioned who wrote it down. It might have been our founder, but basically, you know, at the time, I think orcs would get stuck if they, NPCs mobs would get stuck if they'd do a straight beeline to you, and if there was an obstacle in the way, they just would keep walking into the obstacle. And so I guess people would take advantage of that. But, you know, the idea was we would be what orc NPCs were meant to be and engage with you, right? So etc. But it creates the avenue for, like, it creates the space for that RP to thrive, though. You know what I mean? It's a crazy way to do it, but it's so rewarding and fun, man. And you guys do it on the opposite end, because I've seen, like, I've ran into dungeons, and unfortunately it happened during one of our slaughter moons, now redubbed Bloodrock Nights, but one of our old slaughter moons, we ran into a dungeon. And for the listener, slaughter moon is basically we flood the Outlands Discord with red blood moons, and we would then just group up at the fort or march into a dungeon and kill anything we see. Any blue person we saw, we killed. And we run into Nucero level 2 or 3. It was 3. And your guys had set up like a healing station for do you remember this? Were you there?
Yeah. That's one of my favorite spontaneous events we'll do is we'll go to a dungeon that's popular, right? Like a society dungeon or something. And we set up these wards, and like we lay out blankets and bandages, and we just stand there and heal people and help them fight off monsters if they get attacked, and help them get their corpses. And yeah, you guys come through, and there's like 4 of us and 20 of you, and you just steamrolled us. But hey, you know, whatever. Like that's the fun, right?
Yeah, because as soon as we walked in, I think somebody was like, they were walking by, and you guys were offering them like healing potions and band-aids if they needed it, you know, and and reminding them that y'all were here if they needed a res. Yeah, and like I saw this interaction, and I was like, oh god, man, we're about to ruin this shit. Fuck.
Nope, that was, you know, that's part of it, right? And so we'll make our military stand there in the dungeon. We get swept over in the wave, and next.
So that brings you. So that's where you're at, and you've done a great job, I think, of creating a guild that allows anybody who joins to be whatever the hell they want to be, as long as it fits within the general archetype of what, you know what I mean, you guys envision. But it's not so black and white, and I truly love that. You guys are like, you know, I mean, you guys have all kinds of town folks characters I run into, you know what I mean, and it isn't just knights in shining armors that role play there.
Yeah, we've really expanded. So we now have kind of 3 pillars, which fits with the 3 principles very nicely. There is of course, the knights, the pillar of knighthood, right, of courage. There's the priory, which is kind of our religious sect. That's where you find most of our mages and things like that. And then, of course, the sea dogs, who just kill pirates. But you know, they're the sailors of the guild, and then that's all kind of bound. So if you're not familiar with the virtue system, it's all of the virtues are, you know, correspond with one of the 3 principles of truth, courage, love, except for humility, which corresponds with none of them. And so our townsfolk is kind of our humility that binds us together. So we have just blacksmiths and miners and, you know, all these guys. But yeah, you can really find probably whatever you're looking for. I mean, we do have some restrictions. We still require a name. You know, you have to have like a normal name, not something goofy.
Right.
Yeah, like no murderers, no red hands. So we don't have. We had for a while some like shadow knights, but they weren't like murderers, right? Like they're like spies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really tried to emphasize, like, hey, this is y'all's guild. It's not my guild, right? I came into leadership of it, but at the end of the day, I'm not the one that makes it work.
Right.
And
And if
so
you leave
we promote.
tomorrow, it's still got to run, right? Ideally.
Yeah, and I've actually over time really pushed on getting particularly veteran members moved up into kind of officer ranks. We have a virtues council, which is 8 members of the officer corps, which can be larger, that might vote on very important things like diplomacy or large expenditures, things like that. Um, but for the most part, those guys operate on their own. Like they're empowered to, you know what, you're a chevalier is what they're called, and you can go forth and
Vote.
do as you see is best, right? And I think what's really cool about the Knights Guild community is that level of trust. People join, we give them an aspect, we give them their codexes, whatever you need. We keep a shelf stocked with equipment. So we put out a lot of expenditure on that, but at the end of the day, it's about the community. We're not here to grind PVM content or PvP factions content. We're here to build a community and roleplay as knights, and that's what we do. So I think we do an alright job of it.
I'm gonna ask you a question, but don't take it too politically, okay? Do you get executive order powers as the guild leader?
I do, and so there's 8 voting members on our council, and then the knight commander can be a tiebreak. The way it's worded, it does allow for it, the 8 voters are voting a recommendation, and most of the time, I don't think there's ever been a time where I'm like, no, 8 versus 1, we're doing what I say. But
yeah, I got you. Okay,
the issue we've run into,
technically it's your call at the end of the day, but you're gonna go with what they're
gonna say. The issue we ran into before was one, I just got busier, and so I'm not sitting at the computer 6 hours a day, so I can't be involved in everything. But we would get into these debates and just over and over and over, and it would just stall. And I'm like, we can't do this. We get 2 days, we make a decision, we move on. And if we can't come to a conclusion, if it's split, I'm just going to make a decision and we're going to move on. Like that's basically what it comes down to. But again, I don't know that I've ever jumped in the middle of it. Like I trust those officers, those chevaliers. They do a better job than I would, and we just roll with it. So
I think that's a big problem too, man, is that, and not just for UO or RP guilds, although certainly it applies to it, but people get caught up in these details. This podcast, for example, bro, like this is not a podcast in the like a technical sense. I mean, I guess it is, but not in a professional sense. I mean, and I was like, what do I need? Oh, I need a certain mic, or I need this, I need this, I need that. I'm like, fuck it, man. I know how to record sound, right, from this game.
Just,
I know.
Let it rip.
I'm gonna fucking record it one take and upload that shit, and then whatever happens.
Yep.
If you get caught up in, I need this, or you start seeking advice from others, and they're like, well, I've done a podcast before and I never used that program, or you need to do this, or you're doing it all wrong. We need to switch it to this. That's not the point, right? So the point is, I'm with you. We move forward. We record it. I need a conversation with Tibal. He's going to talk about himself and the guild. This is it. Could it be better? Maybe, but we're moving on to the next one. You know what I mean? And just keep it moving.
So in meat space, I'm an engineer in aerospace, and all of the time, you'll hear like particular leaders and whatnot are like, we get the information we need. We're going to make a decision. If that decision's wrong, we'll change it later. Like, we can't sit here and endlessly debate on what the right thing to do. At some point, we just have to do something. And we try to act with that. And it comes up like in the latest expansion, there was kind of a housing rush, like there usually is, right? After the lottery had ended.
Yeah. By
we
the
had
way,
a few
I
guys.
made like $8 million doing that, and it was the richest I've ever been, and I went broke like 4 days later. So
okay, so we as a guild found out that our neighbors that we would like to buy out of their house, that they refused to sell to us or even talk to us and troll us constantly, were trying to expand and place a bigger house in the new lands. And so some of our guys placed an 8x8 to block that, right? And huge internal debate, like, who are we? What are we doing? Like, is this right? Like, is this virtuous? Ended up, we did that. And a couple weeks later, we literally just gave those neighbors who have been a thorn in our side for years, just gave them the house. We just said, here, no strings attached. Like, we're not asking for anything. And we just transferred it to them. So, like, we make a decision. Maybe that wasn't right. We adjust.
Yeah.
And we act with humility a little bit towards the end.
Well, and I think it's the right approach, because we always say this, right? It's not a unique thing to Bloodrock, but we kind of live by it. This shit is just pixels at the end of the day. When Luthien decided, and I don't know Luthien, but I'm not implying he will or wants to in any way, but should he flip the switch tomorrow, it's all gone. You know, all we had is the memories we made, bro, and the fun we had. If you're not chasing that, then what are we doing? You know what I mean? Like, we're all old enough. We should know better. We've played enough games that we know the value of UO wasn't ever being rich. That was never the fun part about UO. It never is, never was. And you know, that's why I'm grateful for our community, because I think it's made up of a bunch of people to varying degrees, right? Of kind of opinions, but in general, all have come to the realization that, hey, we can have some fun here, and yes, RPing is a way to do that without chasing the in-game spoils, if you will.
Yeah, we make our own reward, you know, like those RP PvP battles you mentioned earlier. There's no faction points for those. There's no gold loot. There's no boss rares, right? It's just 2 hours we carved out on a Saturday night, organized a 10 versus 10 battle at the Winter Harbor, and just made stories. The Yogg Tibal duel, right? That kind of live on in infamy in a lot of people's minds. And you know, another one that stands out was early on a battle at Hailstone with the knights were lined up on that real long bridge, kind of northeast of Prevelia, and the orcs were standing at the foot of it.
Yes.
Nerulf shares that photo a lot, and it's one of my favorite. Like, we're on horseback and the orcs are on foot, and we're like, you cannot cross, and you're like, or whatever. And it was just that, you know, he talked earlier about the Warcraft, the original Warcraft games, the orcs versus human image, and like, to me, that is the UO Outlands version of that, right? Like a line of humans standing against a line of orcs, ready to go at it.
It's a classic moment. It's a classic moment, and I think that kind of defines us. And you know, I want to say thanks, man, to you for the efforts, and you and the leadership over there, because orcs need tin cans, right? We call you guys tin cans. For the listener, that's our orcish slang for these guys, because they're
for armor.
Yeah, they're made of plate mail armor. They're made of metal, and they're squishy and yummy inside. So that's the term. But you know, we provide a service in that regard, and vice versa. You guys do the same. So I do want to kind of just take the opportunity to thank you and everyone over there, because it's awesome having you guys around. It makes logging in just so much more fun. Like, I don't know how many times we're a few of us are on the fort, and we're like, fuck it, let's ride a Hailstone, see if we can pick a fight or something, or just
kill some sheep and piss some people off.
Yeah, piss off some old man that's going to chase us down or something.
That's right. We'll do. And we do the same, right? You show up at the fort and see if anyone's there. It's always a disappointment when it's empty, and you're like, oh man.
Well, let me man, we covered a bunch, and let me ask you one final question. And it's kind of a loaded one, okay? Not loaded, but if you tomorrow, Luthien and Owen hand you the powers, and you have the capability to change anything about the game, what are you changing and why?
Honestly, probably not much. I mean, again, I love the support that they've given us. It's just enough to make it feel like it's ours, but not just to be ridiculously favored. There's like some small things that personally I would love to see. Like, you know, in the King's Fair, when you go to that island and there's no horses, there's no mounts.
Yes.
I love that. I love having an area, particularly a town or like the Orc Fort, where it's like, no mounts, no horses. Everyone's on foot. Little things like that. But, you know, generally speaking, like I try to imagine what would I change? I don't know. Like, we have the war system, so we can do open battles. You know, there's a little bit of everything for people to enjoy. I know while recording that Knights Guild are running bosses. Um, we'll jump on and do factions. I just finally got the last piece of the horse armor for Tibal.
Nice. He's gonna be riding into battle soon.
Dude, stoked. It is so cool looking, and even just little things like that, like, and the staff continues to support, like, adding new weapons, dude. I was so down for new weapons. That was like when I was a kid, 1998. Oh man, I wish they'd add new weapons, new armor, new, all this stuff, and the guys are doing it. And it's
yeah, they did it, man. I mean, like the bows, it helps us as role players because it we just need sometimes pieces and we can put them where we need them. Like the little crossbow, the one-handed crossbow that's like a pistol. Awesome one, awesome fucking crossbow.
Well, and again, the support we get. Like, I remember early on in Outlands, so there's 2 animations for a halberd and a bardiche when you walk with it. One is like upright, like a staff, and the other is holding it like horizontally, like you're crazy.
In war mode, right?
No, just in regular walking. And
okay.
Outlands used the one where they would just hold it horizontal, and it looked so weird. Big axe head just kind of swinging around in front of you. And I remember messaging Owen and being like, hey, there's a different animation for this. Can you change to it? And he's like, we look at it. He's like, yeah. And then they changed it, right? The sword, the giant 2-handed sword, I remember Owen had messaged me. So I do HEMA, historical fencing. That's my other baby. But
I've seen you in the roleplay channel. Yeah, you're like actually out there sword fighting, dude.
Yeah, living the life, a virtuous knight. But one of the classes I've done is Montante, which is like a 6 foot tall, massive greatsword, right? And it's really fun to swing around and get into. And Owen's like showing me, and the guy's like walking with it. I'm like, hey, like early on before it released, I was like, man, that animation's no good. Like, you would rest that on your shoulder. Because it's so heavy, like your arms.
What does
it
weigh? Like 100 and some pounds, or what?
No, it's only like 7 to 8. Like, they're actually not that heavy, but they're awkward. They're big and long, and the weight's all distributed. So you do, like, when you walk around, you just rest it on your shoulder and hold it with one hand. And that's what he changed the animation to when you walk with it. I'm like, that's so good.
Yeah,
it's so
I love
cool.
that one, man. Yeah, that one's awesome.
So okay, I don't know. I don't know what I'd change. I think we just roll with it. More of the same.
Make it ours. Yep. All right, man. Well, Tibal the Shield, I appreciate you coming on, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Yeah, it's been a blast. I've loved listening to the episodes. Again, a real honor to be invited on and kind of share my version of history, if you will. Yeah,
and definitely won't be the last time, man. So maybe after another big event we do or something, we could do a recap episode with a couple of the leaders and stuff. That'd be fun.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to document big fun events. It's a cool idea.
Yep. All right, man. Well, hey, have a good one. Take care.
Hey, you too.